Welcome to More Than Miles, the podcast created to look deep into what it means to be a runner and endurance athlete. Our episodes are filled with real stories from real runners, elite to the everyday athlete. We bring together healthcare providers, athletes, and dive deep into topics that matter most to runners. I'm Dr. Kate Mihevik-Edwards, physical therapist, author, athlete, and complete coffee addict.
And I'm Dr. Kacy Sinders, physical therapist, athlete, and pun expert extraordinaire. We're so passionate about changing running culture to improve the health, wellness, and fulfillment of our endurance athlete community. And we hope that these conversations inspire you to focus on putting your health first so that performance and PRs can follow. Now let's get to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to More Than Miles. Today's guest is Lauren Blankenship. Lauren ran at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. After graduating, she started her coaching career at her Alma Mater before going on to coach at Ole Miss and returning home to Atlanta at Georgia State. She has also served roles in the running industry, working for run specialty stores in marketing and sales departments. Today, Lauren is back in the coaching world, coaching individual athletes as they work towards their running goals.
It was such a treat to get to talk to Lauren about all of her new and old endeavors. She's had a lot of different experiences in many different capacities of the running world. So learning and discussing her experiences was really, really fun. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. Don't want to spoil it, but Lauren has a really exciting new company that she's starting that I think is going to be helpful for so many people traveling across the world and wanting to get in a safe and fun run. So we hope you enjoy this conversation with Coach Lauren Blankenship. So Lauren, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you.
I see you frequently in the park on Tuesday mornings. I was pretty much finishing up my workout as I kind of ran by. But so this is the second time I'm seeing you today. So what a lovely treat.
Yes. And I saw you briefly yesterday because I came and did my gait analysis at Precision.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was running around like crazy and didn't notice. I saw you on the schedule, but then somehow missed you when you were in there. Glad you came in for a gait analysis. Hope it was helpful. I know it would be.
It was.
So we always like to start in learning about people's personal athletic and running journey. So whether they started in some other sport and then transitioned into running and just what your relationship with sport has been. So take us back. How did you get into sport and running?
Yeah, well, I think many would say that running can be in soccer. It started on the soccer field for me, really. So many people think of running as punishment. I never really had that in my background, luckily, but I started playing soccer in fourth grade. I do remember jogging a little bit with my dad and my stepmom or rollerblading while they would run. But my running career really didn't start till high school. So my sophomore year, I made the varsity soccer team. I went to Wesleyan School, which is located here in Norcross, Georgia. And my Bible teacher was like, hey, we see this girl, she's speedy on the soccer field and we are a smaller school and we could use some more numbers, but they had me come out for cross. So to answer that, started my running career in cross country my sophomore year of high school. Was fortunate enough to win state my sophomore year, my junior year, and then my senior year, and clearly found a talent in running and then went on to run in college. I got a scholarship to run at Samford University, which is in Birmingham. It's just a smaller D1. And I think it's just a good example that it's, no matter what division you are, because I think there's many great divisions to run in now based on where you are and what you want out of your college experience. But it felt very honored that I got to go to Samford. I think it kind of can, especially being from in Atlanta, I wanted to make that a point that I am an Atlanta native. So many people are going to tech and they're going to Georgia and whatnot. And so to get the opportunity to go somewhere a little different was neat. So it was a smaller school, but in a bigger city. And I thrived in that setting, I think, just coming from a smaller school like Wesleyan. But yeah, it kicked off from there. And I ended up having, in short, a really great collegiate career. I had 3 All-Americans at Samford, 2 on the track in the 5K. And then I ended up having 1 in cross and then a whole nother list of accolades, as you can imagine, at the conference level. But those were my bright and shiny ones that those people remember. So it was a great honor to, I think it was 2017, to get inducted into the Samford Hall of Fame. I was the first ever female to be inducted. And if you know, like people like Bobby Bowden from FSU, he actually went to Samford. So a little Samford shout out there. But that was great. And right out of college, I actually got into college coaching. So stop me at any time if you want to take a direction. But I think that was me answering my question of when I
that
started.
That was my next question. Have you always wanted to coach others? Where did that passion come from? So you are reading my mind, Lauren. Great job.
Yeah. I know you can find yourself rambling sometimes when you are talking about yourself, when you don't always do that all the time. But yeah, so I ended up, I remember I got contacted by Macmillan Running to go run professional right out, but I ended up actually getting a coaching gig at my alma mater at Samford. So I ended up at that time, actually my head coach I had my whole career was let go in my indoor season. And so it was actually a gentleman named Rod Tiffin that came in from Alabama. And so I ended up coaching not only under Rod Tiffin, a whole new head coach, but also our school had entered a new conference, the SoCon, Southern Conference. I was in the OVC in my day. And so, yeah, it made my first year coaching at Samford a little different, but obviously interesting coaching people that you just stood up next to in line to run races. So that was a great experience. We actually thrived. The women did really well that first year. So I coached there and then ended up actually getting an opportunity to coach at Ole Miss. And so I went to coach at Ole Miss, if you're a Hottie Toddy fan. And then what brought me back to Atlanta was I coached at Georgia State. So there's obviously a lot more details in between why I made the shifts and whatnot, but that's a story for another time.
That's all right. So what did you like about coaching and kind of what brought you or what made you decide to do that right after school?
I think the opportunity to coach at your alma mater was obviously a huge one, right? Did I realize naturally that was going to be the route I was going to take? Probably, no, not fully. But I think to back up to what my undergrad was, I started in education. And then I actually my sophomore year, like most people do, kind of change their direction. At Samford, they had what was called, it was a consumer sciences, but it was a family studies was basically the focus. And so I went that direction because I knew I could get my master's in education, or I could go the counseling route. And so counseling has always been a passion of mine. And so you might see where I'm going with this, but I wanted to go. I immediately after school was planning to go get my master's in counseling, but then I got into the coaching world. And I think I realized there in a lot of the ways of the opportunities that I got to coach at Samford that I really could counsel through the sport as well. And that showed me early signs of doing that. And given the circumstances that I was kind of thrown in, my first year, actually, I was put right next to my college assistant coach coaching, which was it was hard. It was different. The first season, he actually right next to Samford is actually cool. If you didn't know this, it's a Paralympic site for the Olympics. So that year, my assistant coach got to go to Beijing and coach there. So that first month or so, I was actually coaching the whole men's and women's cross country team by myself, my first year of college coaching. So talk about being thrown in the deep end, right?
Oh my God. Yes. And I used to live in Birmingham and I actually worked at Lakeshore Rehab.
Did you really? Awesome. Yeah.
So for one of my rotations for PT school. And I used to run by the trails right near Samford. Mm-hmm. So I know exactly where you're talking about and kind of, it's really interesting. But yeah, I was over at Lakeshore. So that training facility and all that right there.
It's really neat to have. I remember one athlete that I coached when I was at Samford on the other side of things. It was a young lady and she actually had an injury going on, but we would go in and use but it was just where you do your arms. Yeah. And it was really neat to see, the progress she made from that in deep water running at that time. So I think I clearly got, thrown into some great opportunities pretty early on and thrown into the deep end where I had to sink or swim and kind of come to the top. But moving to Ole Miss, that was great just because it was SEC. The head coach was phenomenal, but the assistant coach was actually the head pole vault coach as well as the distance. So I did a lot of the recruiting under him. I did recruiting at Samford too, but I did a lot of recruiting there. And so that was really neat to get to do that. And that year we actually hosted SECs. So I remember how fun it was to be able to actually, we went to the golf course out there where the golf team practiced too. And we literally got on a golf cart and would make the whole route for the SEC conference. So that was a really great experience. But yeah, what ultimately brought me back to Atlanta was to coach at Georgia State. And so, in that time, I think I was in, my early mid 20s, like 24, 25. So you were missing girlfriends' weddings and whatnot. I think I still hear it to this day, one in particular that I missed. But so getting back to Atlanta, to, be a little closer to family was when that opportunity came. As you know, in college coaching, if a head coach has ever threatened his job, they could clean house. And so that was a little bit of a threat at that time. And so ultimately, though, it brought me back to Atlanta. So I was grateful for that, opportunity at both schools. That was really neat. And to say you coached at your alma mater, pretty cool. But yeah, Georgia State was cool. That was at the time when I believe it was Bill Curry came in as the head football coach. So that was kind of an exciting time at Georgia State. And I was there for 2 years and we did some great things there. Really helped a lot of recruiting and turn around the program there. And, in a school that's located downtown, we had to, I remember I was living in Buckhead at the time, but you drive down, you park your car in the parking deck. And then I had to go across the street up, a parking deck to the top where they had these rinkety old buses that we would then transport the kids all the way to the river, to Kennesaw Mountain, to whatnot. So I always tell people I actually did a fun trail run not super long ago because a lot of my clients have never been out to Kennesaw Mountain. And I told them, I was like, usually on a Sunday, if you're in season, you'll see Kennesaw State, you'll see Georgia State, you'll see Georgia Tech out here, all the kids running that 10-mile out and back loop. So it was a thing.
And so now you've kind of transitioned into coaching more individuals.
Yeah. When I was coaching at Georgia State, I actually got a part-time job at West Stride. If you know West Stride, it is located right there off Northside Parkway in Buckhead. Is a female-owned running store in the Atlanta area. Shout out.
We love West Stride. And we had Jeannie on the podcast.
We had Jeannie
last year.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes. Yeah. Jeannie is family to me. I worked part-time with her. And even when I stepped away from college coaching for about 5.5 years. So West Stride definitely has a special place in my heart, but I love run specialty, but that's where I got my start. So in run specialty, working on that side. So yeah, to fast forward, I would work at the store as, a sale on the sales floor, but then they ultimately had some Stride Strong, some coaching positions that they ultimately let me where I could coach in front face to the community. And then in that period of 5.5 years, I also got a stipend type gig where I was the head coach over at Holy Spirit Prep off Mount Perrin Road. So just kind of touching where I did get a little bit of high school time. I actually coached JV soccer when I was there, but I was the head men's and women's cross country and track coach when I was there, which was fun. And they were like I think it's called NAIA now is that league that they're in. So I'd never really had a lot of exposure to that division before, but that was really fun to see them do well. So yeah, those two last couple touches were where I really kind of completed from college to high school. And then really starting at the stores where I realized I started leading the group runs more. We were really building our Wednesday night run there. And you started seeing these individuals showing up that wanted to train for their first half, and they're in like their mid-20s. And I just saw this need of so many people. And at that time too, personally, I was in my late 20s, going on early 30s, and that time that I was working for Jeannie. And I actually did my first marathon. And, of course, when you do it, then everybody's like, okay, she's actually a legit runner, right? Like if you can make it, then. No, I'm just kidding. No, but it was.
Hold on a second. I would like to stop here for a moment.
We need
to have a discussion around this because I think it's incredibly insane that people think that you might not be a real runner or you don't have the same cred or credibility if you haven't run a marathon. When you had, like for you in particular, you had all these accolades of everything you've done in the past in your running career, and you hadn't maybe run a marathon. So it wasn't until you ran a marathon that you got that street credit. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't really pinpoint, and I say it kind of jokingly. I think I probably put more pressure on myself to run a marathon at that time because, especially if you're coaching people, and I hadn't even run one myself. That was where I was just like, you know what, I need to do this. And so I ran Savannah, which unfortunately is no longer a thing anymore. Savannah Rock and Roll Marathon.
All right.
When was the end of that?
I think last year was the last one. And the weather was horrible. I think it got partially canceled. I think the full got canceled because of rain and lightning and rock and roll nixed it.
Well, and isn't that the same race that also had a lot of trouble because of heat a few years before then?
I believe so. I think it was
2016. They ran out of water. They started putting runners without telling them. I had friends who had gotten to the finish line and had run 24.6 miles. And luckily, I was registered for the full that year and knew I was not having a good day. So I cut off at the half, and that was a good decision.
Oh my gosh.
It's a shame though, because I mean, of course I naturally my first marathon was there, but that's, I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but it's a shame that, because I know that brought a lot of money to the city and it was a fun race, but there are lots of good marathons out there for sure. So maybe they'll come up with another one in Savannah, but yeah, I ran my first marathon, ladies. And I humbly say this, I got my first GPS watch at West Drive. And at the time, it was like the Forerunner 10 or 11, and you guys will love this story. I probably shouldn't be telling this as a coach, but it's actually a really good story, because I was running, and talk about, how important pacing is in coaching, right? We live in a world where everybody's looking at their GPS, let's load it to Strava. Everybody wants to give you kudos. But when I was coaching, I know especially at Georgia State, I feel like the GPS watches were more of a thing for the kids. And it's like, just take your watch off and go for a run. Where are those days anymore? Like do a course and just go for a run. But anyways, in my first marathon, I didn't realize that you could scroll down and actually see your actual pace. So in the Savannah Marathon, it was like, ding, mile 1, ding, mile 3. And I'm like, yeah, I'm on pace. Ladies, I ran my first marathon in 2:56. And I was second female overall. So I thought you'd appreciate that story about the watch. So now I do know, and I have advanced in my GPS love. But for me, I love that story just in terms of especially in my coaching, I want people to know, like in such a GPS and electronic world, like how important pacing is. And so that's a big part of my coaching too.
Oh yeah. I think that's a great discussion point too, because psychologically looking down at your watch, it affects you, right? So whether the pace is faster than you thought, or usually it's slower, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm breathing so hard, I'm running so slow, my watch says this. Mm-hmm. And it's just so easy for you to ignore kind of like your internal physiological signals and take the watch as like the gospel, right? Right. So how do you work with your athletes on that right now? And what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, I think, I think I back up and just say that I'm not a big believer in giving a program to just anybody. I like to get to know my athletes, and I like to meet them where they are in their training, and not disregard anything that has gotten them to where they are and what they see as successful. Because I see that a lot, like people are doing, I ask that even in my questionnaire, what does a typical week look like? So, you don't want to tell people, this is wrong, you shouldn't do this. Like, let's see and understand why you're doing X, Y, Z, and then let's build off that. But for the pacing question, I think that comes with time, right? It comes through different kinds of workouts that we're doing, and then ultimately the goals that the individuals are setting. And so usually I'm never starting with just I'm starting with pace training, but really at first it's about getting to know what is their easy pace. Most people I find don't fully know what their easy pace is when I start with them. So it really starts like, hey, let's determine what is that easy pace window. And a lot of times I'm trying to just get people to slow down, especially in marathon training. And then, and so I think, and then once that light bulb comes on in time, I'm building healthy mileage too within that mix. And then we put in workouts. I have some workouts that I love from the time I coached at Ole Miss. And these are not like crazy out of the box workouts, but they're fairly simple, but they are just really, really good. And they just help people learn pacing and think about that. So they're just through different workouts that I'm doing, and in the same through, I can't change someone's form or anything overnight. It all just takes time to work that. And if I can show them that I basically I do weekly distribution for sure that first month. And then based on I have an a la carte menu. So based on the program that the individual chooses, they get, either a phone call a week or more attention. And so that time we can talk more through those certain aspects of their training and what that looks like. And that's where that counseling comes in. Is half the time it's me just showing them what they're doing and then putting those two dots together to make sure that they kind of see like the opportunity ahead of them.
It's a great way to approach running and coaching because everyone is so individual. I always say this, and I truly believe that like most running injuries are preventable if we just had the education behind it. And so taking time with each of your athletes, kind of going through, explaining the pacing, explaining that maybe they don't need to do what their other friend is doing is so valuable.
Mm-hmm. It's neat to see and watch the journey in it for sure. But yeah, when I started in 2014, I started doing private coaching. That's when I first got that Run with LB LLC back then. And so that's when I just realized, like I said, that opportunity to coach more individuals. I was doing really well with it. To be honest, I wish I would have really gone head full in more at that time in my life. But I ended up getting an opportunity to be a sales rep for a company called M+ that had created a run specialty division. Basically, I was a sales rep and I went around stores across the Southeast selling Trigger Point and Belega socks and a slew of other brands, but those are the two that most of you might know. So I only say that to just say the Trigger Point, I'm glad I was for about 6 years with them before the pandemic hit, but Trigger Point Therapy, if you don't know, it's a massage therapy line. I teach so much of that in my coaching as well. And so that's been a huge blessing to have had that experience. So not only am I teaching, obviously, the running aspect, but the injury prevention, the foam rolling, whatnot, in the early stages. So that was good. As I look back, I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have stayed private coaching heavy at that time, but then I wouldn't have gotten all the experience of being a sales rep and whatnot in those years. And then as we all know, the pandemic hit. And that changed a lot of life for us. So I ended up getting a job with Fleet Feet in marketing. Started as in the Decatur store here in the Atlanta area, and then the operator actually ended up acquiring the Peachtree City store. So I basically was the marketing director over those two stores for 2 years. And that gave me a lot of background in marketing. I don't really prime myself as a big social media poster. So sorry if you go to my page right now, I'm not a really great poster. I even though I've worked in marketing and sales, I do not pride myself as being a really great post person. But I'm trying to work on my social handles there for all of you people that might go check out my social pages after this. But yeah, I and then I just realized in the past, in the past year, how much I miss the private coaching. And we all can be in jobs and we're just grinding. And even though I loved my job at Fleet Feet in marketing, and I've made so many great relationships and partnerships through all of it, I learned probably that's the biggest thing I learned from working at Fleet Feet is that I just love partnerships. I love meeting people. I'm a people person. I want to be out. I want to be helping people. And so I unfortunately have had some big things happen in my life in the past 6 to 8 months personally that just kind of showed me, hey, like it's time to just give this a go and go for your passion. And so that's where I have officially decided to go full time with my private coaching and jump back in. So not to cut off our last conversation, but I just want to make sure I kind of full circled on that.
No, that's all right. Well, we're glad you were at Fleet Feet too, because that's where we met you.
Yes. Yeah. Did.
And just your capacity in marketing and that type of thing. So why don't we circle back to kind of that and the idea of like the running industry? And you've been in the running industry in one way, shape, or form for a long, long time. Yeah. What have you seen in terms of trends and shifts in the running community over this time period?
Well, are we talking product or are we talking just showing up for group run, or are we
more like the community itself? So not necessarily what we buy, unless that's part of it, but how has the runner changed over the last several years from like what you've seen, and in what ways, whether it be a better understanding of balancing, mental, emotional, and physical health? Or is it more towards, okay, everyone's heads down and just, running and checking their watches all the time? Or is it, runners are more community-based versus competitive? I mean, I know what some of the research says, but what has your experience been?
I think coming out of COVID, I will say run specialty is seen like a boom, right? So you're in a time where everything closed down and more people got out and walked and ran more ever than before because they couldn't maybe go to the gym if their membership wasn't active still or whatnot. So there are definitely that trend of like that boom for running, walking, I think has definitely been a positive thing for run specialty. I personally started back the group run at Fleet Feet. So hands-on in terms of like the community aspect. I just saw that run completely grow and grow and grow. And, you're seeing like 60 to 80 people on the norm on a Wednesday at the Decatur store, which is really neat. And I can't tell you in the past, and I didn't technically leave Fleet Feet full time. I'm there part time, but I still try to go and work the Wednesday run with them. And it's amazing how many people have come up and said that just be a part of something has changed their life, no matter what they were going, if they were going through depression or just, working from home and needed separation from seeing too much family all in the same room. But yeah, I think from a mental social, I think people hopefully realize the need for movement. And I think what Fleet Feet does, and run specialty in general sets it apart is through their service level, that they really create a space for people to come in and assess their situation, not just grab a shoe, to really talk about why they need or would want XYZ, because there are a lot of options there in the store for people. And that can be, I think the run space still is intimidating for some people. So yeah, I think there's definitely like a positive trend. There's in terms of like the brands, they're definitely just competing to be in that space together. But am I answering your question? Let's make sure I'm nailing exactly what you are wanting me to.
No, that's great. I was just kind of wondering what your perspective was, especially since you and I and Kacy have all been in the running space in different areas for quite a long time, and things change over time, what people think are important or the research that's out or what, all those different things. So I was just asking your perspective. And that was
and I think there's still so many like layers to it, because there's so many different people that whether you're coming in new or you are like a experienced runner and you just geek out on all the tidbits of every single bit of shoe. And so, I mean, when I was there working full time, I mean, you definitely had, you're really those customers that are very intensely have needs. But then we saw a lot of referrals from our medical partners that they were referring to us because they're going through what you deal with, mostly plantar fasciitis and whatnot. So, brick and mortar, I think is safely still alive. I think that's probably like, thank goodness, like brick and mortar is still here, right? Because in such a trend of a world to go online, and Fleet Feet and many stores did go online. In the pandemic, they amped up their websites. That is more of a thing there for sure. But I think that there's a lot of beautiful things that came out of the pandemic too. So yeah, we'll see kind of what happens in the future. But I know they were so good. I know they're definitely seeing some waves lately, as the economy faces different struggles, and maybe buying a new pair of shoes isn't most important for people. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't even count the money I spend on shoes as like, it's not real money. Like, this is a necessity.
Fake money.
It's like
grows on trees.
It's like going to the grocery store. Like, of course, I need to eat just as much as I need running shoes. But don't even budget it in.
It amazes me, people that will go and spend $150 on a bar tab, but they will not go buy a pair of shoes.
Very true.
Yeah, no judgment either way. But yeah, I don't even think about the money I spend on shoes. I'm like, I'm going to put miles on them. I need them. So.
Well, there are definitely perks to working in run specialty, I'll say.
Oh, yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
If I took you down to see my wall of shoes, you would tell me I have a shoe problem. Let's just say that.
Lauren, there's another thing that I would like to talk about, and it's your running tours company that you're.
Oh, yeah.
I think when we had that
face we just got, Kate, I'm excited about this.
I know. So it's really cool because we got to have coffee together. It might even be a whole month ago already.
I think it was. It was definitely.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Time is flying.
Yes. And we were talking about, talking about all the different things. And one of the things you talked about was the Run Atlanta tours. And could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think it's such a good idea.
Yeah, it's it's still coming off the ground, in fairness to it. But my LLC is ATL Run Tours. Actually, in my time at Fleet Feet, me and my coworker got an experience to go lead one at a convention center downtown. And we both looked at each other. We did not get paid for it or anything like that. Just an opportunity came, and it was a great way for us to kind of talk about Fleet Feet and whatnot. Me and that individual looked at each other and we were like, this was really fun. This could be an opportunity. And another opportunity did fortunately come around, and we did it. And I was like, well, let's use the same course, but let's put some history on it. And so we did a little bit of that. And I have a contact here in Atlanta that was wonderful in giving us some tips. I think in downtown Atlanta, there's a lot of history and a lot of opportunity there to share. We did that second one. And then unfortunately with that individual, we wanted to kind of move forward together, but that individual just didn't have the capacity to do so at the time. And so, when I re-upped my LLC, I was going to do it run with LB again, but it just, apparently enough time didn't pass for me to re-up and do that. So I'm doing more of a DBA with Run with LB, but my LLC is ATL Run Tours. So yes, that is my next passion and release, hopefully, is to work. It doesn't have to be just with conventions. It can be with really any company in Atlanta. When I worked at Fleet Feet and many other stores, or even when I traveled around the Southeast doing events at different running stores, you're just creating an opportunity to educate on said brand or said activation. And it brings people together, and you can really do it and teach people how to get out there in a safe way. I saw that at the group runs, like so many people that show up, and running etiquette is a thing, my friends. It was actually a topic on one of my sessions this morning with one of my athletes, because we personally were dodging bikes and whatnot in scenarios of Atlanta and safely crossing roads. And it was a conversation. So run safety is a big part of my hope for ATL Run Tours, is that I can use it as an opportunity to create speaking engagements or ways to be able to guide a company that came to Atlanta, whether they're staying at a convention center or they want to put on an activation to raise awareness for something. And I'm not putting myself in a box here. Let's just say that. But I do hope it's something fun that you can create opportunities, whether it be bachelorettes or different ways. Because I know I'm not married yet. But I know that when I do, I would love like a fun bachelorette. I don't want like a running bachelor, someone to guide us would be really cool. Like, so some opportunities like that. And I know that there's other people in Atlanta that have done it in the past, or maybe are doing it to some capacity. And I don't want to compete with anybody else. I just want to create, more opportunities to show people to be able to get out and move safely. So when I'm requesting for people for those opportunities come on, join me, please. We're better together, right? So, but yeah, it's something new and off the ground, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I do look forward to opportunities that can come from that. I think to be able to stand up and talk, or say someone wanted to do a fun 5K activation and get their corporation to do a run walk, and they completed a 5K, I could actually even give a training program for that. So opportunities where I can bring in my coaching expertise plus opportunities like that would be cool. So a girl can dream.
Well, it's good it's really nice for people when they come into the city. Like whenever you travel to different places, you're always kind of going to running shoe stores or like Googling, like or even looking at Strava, like what are the most common running areas, or where do I go? And it would be really neat to be able to say like, oh, why don't you do this? And then also get the history of the city. And I think it'd be really great.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, I'm not trying to be a stand in downtown Atlanta that you just come to and get. Absolutely not. Unfortunately, I just don't have all that time. But if people consult me for opportunities like that, I have a Run with LB Strava page. It is on invite only at this time, but absolutely people can request to get in there within means. And I am adding routes, and I will only grow that to have routes around the city and whatnot. But yes, the opportunity to create, like you said, that is definitely a need, whether I'm able to do it through Atlanta Run Tours or like where someone can safely. And so that was my idea with the hotels, is that I can give them some of those resources as well. So hopefully we can do that.
That's a really great idea. I can't tell you, I get messages a couple times a year from people I haven't talked to in years. And they're like, hey, I'm in Atlanta for XYZ. I want to know where to run. Can you run with me?
Yeah.
And so to have, like someone like you, or to have a service like that, I think is super helpful, because I can't tell you how many times I've been in new cities. I just hate the treadmill. And so if I can see the city, I want to, but obviously I want to be safe doing it. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, I think talk about trends, I think health and wellness is such a, on an upward trend, at least we hope it stays that way. And so I think, when companies are coming to Atlanta, or they're hopefully they're thinking more about some healthy things that they can do instead of just a dinner at night, right? Like if you've ever been to any sort of conference, you're sitting in an office all day or in a convention room all day. So if those opportunities come to be able to lead, people in a safe way or to have a speaking engagement around it, I think you just be surprised how many people just don't know running etiquette or run safety. It's scary how many people don't.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It is a huge thing, the etiquette, but also the safety piece, especially when you're in a big city that you've never been to before.
Yeah. And that being said, sometimes when I was on the road, you found the place that you felt comfortable running, but you almost maybe didn't run sometimes because if you didn't feel comfortable and maybe male versus female, that's its own conversation, But yeah, I think there's definitely opportunity there.
One last question I think we have for you, Lauren, is, and this is a broad question, and you've been doing a great job. Just take it and run with it, whatever comes to mind. But if there's one piece of running advice that you can give to all runners, regardless of what level they're running at, maybe it could be based off some of the training errors you see or just kind of trends like we were talking about, what would it be?
I think that running is such a gift. I think that running is something that you really can take down the road with you. And I always say that meet people where they are, because I think we need to remember to also meet ourselves where we are in running. I'll say even from someone like myself that's had a great past career to, even in my late 30s now, I'm not the same as I was then. I maybe can't do exactly the same things right now in my running career that I could do then. And that can be humbling, right? To compare back. But then you think of someone who is just beginning, right? And so I think my advice would just be to remember to, no matter what journey or what season you are on, just to remember to meet yourself where you are and give yourself grace in that. And I think that's where I've been able to see success in my coaching, is just being able to really identify that and help people feel nurtured in that process.
I think that's great. And that's something that I have to think about all the time too. So my career as running marathons and running is pretty much over. But lately I've been doing 2 miles once or twice a week for run walk. And it's such a different, humbling experience than, training for and qualifying for the Boston Marathon.
Absolutely.
And doing hill repeats and all the workouts and beating the boys. That's a very different place than where I am now. And I'm more grateful now than I've ever been to be able to take a couple steps. And I do think that it takes a while to be able to step back and acknowledge that and find the gratitude in it when we have this tendency to compare ourselves to who we were before and the goals that we've previously met.
Yeah. Yeah. And just depending on whatever's going on in your personal life too, and having grace in those seasons, whether it's, when things are going good, they're going good, right? That's when you see people posting more on Facebook, when their Strava's going crazy, when things are good, but life has its ups and downs. So it's just being able to still also humbly be like, okay, I'm still going to show up for myself today. I'm still going to get out the door. I'm still going to believe that I can do this, that you still got it, right? So
we all still
got it. Exactly. That's how we need to name the book. We all still got it.
Well, that's going to be the title of the episode. So thank you. You did my job for me.
Okay. All right.
Well, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for taking the time today to come talk with us. Every time we have a conversation, I really enjoy it.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. You're doing great work. I'm happy and pleased to see what you're doing too. And that was very humbling to go through the gait analysis myself yesterday.
I hope it was good though.
No, it was good. It was good.
Okay, good. Yeah, it is a lot. You get a lot of information.
Watching themselves run. I'm like, sorry, we really have to go over this, but it's important.
Yeah. And it is very humbling too, because you do see so much. And I always like to say, look, just because we saw all of these things doesn't mean it's a huge deal. Now we know where to start and how to get you to a point where you feel really good running. And that's what it's really about, right? Is, the stronger we are, the better we move.
Absolutely. Yep. Having partners like you guys that can help me give more of that information, because it's kind of like I'm the coach. I'm not trying to be the PT, I'm not trying to be that. So I really appreciate partnerships like this. So thank you for allowing me to come on.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for listening today. We are so happy that you're here. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend. Even better, share it on social media, because sharing is caring. And the more people we can reach, the better.
Another way you can help us out is by leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcast. So give us those 5 stars and tell us how awesome we are. Really, we love to hear how awesome we are. To support our work financially, you can also join our Patreon squad at patreon.com/morethanmiles, where for a few dollars a month, you can help us keep the show going and growing.
This season is sponsored by Fast Bananas. Why buy multiple subscriptions made for everyone when you can have one specifically crafted for runners? Fast Bananas has online yoga classes, strength training programs, meditations, recipes, communities to ask questions, and so much more. Check out Fast Bananas at fastbananas.com or follow them on Instagram at fastbananasrun.
Don't forget that training is so much more than miles.